Hello and welcome back to another story in the life of the old-time rock and roller. Now in Hollywood, there was a battle going on between disco, funk, soul, R&B on the one hand, and rock on the other hand. It was becoming very difficult for rock players to get their standard gigs because the dance craze had taken over. Saturday Night Fever and all of this. But it is probably 1972 when two friends of mine, Hubie Herd and Kenny Lupper, started playing with Billy Preston. They recorded Out of Space and Space Race with Billy Preston, and they went gold. And then in 1973, the God Squad, they called it. Billy Preston took his whole band, including Hubie Herd and Kenny Lupper, both keyboard players. That was also on the Will It Go Round in Circles record. They did a tour of Europe opening for the Rolling Stones. And Mick Taylor played lead guitar for Billy Preston on that tour. Even George Harrison came into the mix at one time. Now we had some questions from the subscribers about this band that I was in. And how'd that question go?
I heard in one of your other videos that you met Hubie Herd from Billy Preston's band that led you to playing in a group called Silver, Platinum, and Gold. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, of course. So as you just mentioned, and I had mentioned in a previous video back in '74, I was at the Starwood and I met Hubie and we exchanged numbers. Now when I got back from the USO tour of Asia and I was playing with the Kathy McDonald band, somewhere along 1975 towards the end of the year, I got a call from Hubie. And he said, man, I'm putting together a super group. It's called Silver, Platinum, and Gold. And we've got three incredible female vocalists. One, Edna Richardson. She was a former Ikeette in the 60s, in the 70s, and then she quit the Ike and Tina Revue and was persuaded by Hubie to start this new band. The other two singers were Flo and Renee King, and they were cousins. Renee married Hubie. So Edna was silver, Flo was gold, and Renee was platinum. Edna's husband, Soko Richardson, was a monster drummer. He was born in Louisiana around 1936, so he was older than all of us. Soko had recorded 5 albums with Ike and Tina Turner, starting in 1966 with River Deep Mountain High. Everybody knew that song. It was a classic. And he even helped with the arrangement of Proud Mary. So Soko with 5 albums with Ike and Tina, 7 albums with John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, 2 albums with Albert Collins, including the Iceman, and 1 album was Silver, Platinum, and Gold. On the bass was Ronnie Green. And Ronnie was the nicest guy. And he was the first guy that I played with that had that slapping funk thumb bass thing. And he had it down, man. He would spank that thing. So he and Soko would get a groove going. And Hubie, they called him the Reverend because of his gospel background and orientation. And so he called me up and he said, look, come on over and jam with us. I think I'd like you to be in the band. And I went over, I met all the girls and Ronnie and Soko. We played, hit it off really good. And Hubie said, you're my guy. And we're gonna rehearse and we're gonna do an album. We'll showcase, of course, first the normal steps. So I was all in for it. I learned all of their material And they had some great songs, like I Got a Thing for Your Love and My Man, Coming Up from the Roots. Really funky. We also had some very sophisticated changes that Hubie had learned from working with Billy and all of the gospel stuff that he had played throughout the years. We probably rehearsed for 6 months, and we did a couple of my songs. One was called My Song of Love, and we broke into an up-tempo going out, Take Me Higher, where the girls really excelled on. We were all about the same age within a year or two, with the exception of Soko, who I mentioned was maybe 10 years older. So we rehearsed, and finally we got our showcase opportunity at the Starwood, of all places, where we played, Van Halen played, all the up-and-coming bands played. So there was a guy named Tal, and he was the executive producer, the money man. And he was in the audience. He saw the band, and he said, "Man, you guys are smoking. I'm going to sign you, and we will record an album." So the first album, we were all really happy. And I think that night was the first night that Flo had what we called the original wardrobe malfunction. Because we were out there playing, and you know, she had a very low cut top and maybe a feather or something covering something, and all of a sudden her nipple popped out. And she didn't really know it, you know, for 30 seconds or something, until one of the girls looked over at her and said, you know. So she covered it up. And we were really excited because we did all that rehearsing and work to get a deal, and we got the deal. So recording started about a week and a half later at a really good studio in Hollywood. And I think we finished the record in about a week and a half. It was a pretty good time for all the songs we did and all of the intricate harmonies and everything. We would go over and over and over the 3-part harmony. So it was as tight as the Andrews Sisters or the Pointer Sisters or any of those female groups. I don't know exactly how Hubie decided who would be silver, platinum, and gold. But since his wife, Renee, had to come first, then she got the rarest mineral, platinum. Edna was silver. She had the most experience, nearly 15 years with Ike and Tina, performing and dancing and singing. And then Flo King. She had almost an angelic voice. So we're in the studio, and everything was going really smooth. And a beautiful blonde came in. And the story went that I left with her. And I remember her being there, and I remember, wow, this chick is hot, she's gorgeous. But I don't remember anything after that. And a month or two later, Terry, who I was living with at the time, was talking to Renee or somebody, and they called me Howie. And she said, yeah, we were recording one night, and this beautiful blonde came in, and Howie left with her. And that was really all I didn't even really remember that much until I was asked about it. We did a lot of fun things and sort of side gigs to get ready for the Starwood. And one afternoon, we played at a rhythm and blues soul picnic. There were hundreds of people there. I mean, tons of musicians. I brought my 4-track TEAC, and Hubie introduced me to the McCrarys, Flat Top and Cookie McCrary, husband and wife team, and we recorded a song called Hip You To It. I was sitting there with them on a break, getting to know them, and they said, yeah, we got this song Flat Top sings, and I said, well, how's it go? And they said, well, we don't have any music. And so I had my acoustic with me too. And I heard about 2 measures of it, and I said, wait a minute, let's try this. And I put this funky little riff in on it, almost like the Commodores or something. And they started singing right along to it. Hubie jumped in on the organ. I got up on the stage and grabbed my electric, and Ronnie jumped in, and they grabbed the microphones. And we laid it down, and it was really a cool song. So then we took another break, and I met Stevie Wonder's writing partner, Leif Garrett. And I think they wrote one of Stevie's early hits together. So Leif said, well, what are you working on? And I said, well, I got this song here called Go Out and Find It. Go on out and find your love. He said, play me some of it. So I started playing it, and he started singing along to it. And then I went to one chord, like an F to a G, and he said, repeat that part, repeat that part. And so I did it 3 times, and he sang, go on out and find it, don't you be blinded, go on out and find your love. And then down, boom, 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 boom.
Away, no babe, if you're not satisfied with what you've got, and you really thought you had a lot, go on out and find it, don't you be blinded, go on out and find your love, go on out and find it, don't you be blinded, go on out and find your love, go on out and find it, don't you be blinded, go on out and find your love, go on out and find it, don't you be blinded, go on out and find your love.
And later, I recorded that song with a guy named Mark Aubin, who was a friend of Tony Carey, and Miko. They were a trio from Connecticut that had gotten a record deal on Epic Records. And Rob Roberti's cousin George was doing a little bit of roadie work for them. I went into the recording studio with Go On Out and Find Your Love that Lee Garrett and I worked on that day at the picnic. Another character that Hubie introduced me to was Kenny Lupper. Now, Kenny played with Billy for all of those years, and he was flying high because he said he had just recorded some synthesizer for Gary Wright on the Dreamweaver album. And Gary Wright played in Spooky Tooth. So that was really a great thing. And although Kenny was gay, he married Berry Gordy's sister, Gwen, just for some cover. And Gwen had a lot of money, being Berry's sister and connected to the Motown fame. So Kenny came over to my apartment, and I'll just add another quick side point. When I had gotten back from the USO tour and we had been robbed, we moved to McCadden Place, which was just off Sunset. And we woke up one morning and I said, hey, there's a trailer out in front of the house. And I walked out there, and it was James Garner's makeup portable dressing room. And they were filming an episode of the Rockford Files on Sunset, just around the corner. So I knocked on the door to see who it was, and it was James Garner, and I used to watch him in Maverick. And I told him so. So he gave me an autograph, and he said, hey, you tell your daddy that we're coming back with Maverick, and those days will be back again. So we kind of came to a sudden end at that house, because right next door to it was the Yoga Community Center. And so they would be meditating and whatnot, and I'd plug in my 50-watt Marshall with my Gibson Les Paul Jr., and I'd start wailing away. And a guy named Barry, well, he called himself Sadashiba, came running in and said, you've got to stop, we're meditating, we don't know where we are, quickly stop. And I said, what's your name? He said, Sadashiba. And I said, no, what's your real name? He said, Sadashiba. I said, what does it say on your driver's license? He said, Barry. I said, okay, Barry, look, I've got to practice, okay? And I'm sorry about the disturbance. So we moved out of there and over to Kings Road, which was right in the heart of West Hollywood, just maybe a mile from the Whiskey and Gazzarri's and the Starwood and all those cool places. So Kenny would come over to visit, and one day he'd be high as a kite. He said, Howie, come look at my new $40,000 Porsche. It's an unbelievable car. I'm going 85, going up through the hills and everything. So I went out and saw the car, and it was great. And then Kenny would come back and he'd say, hey, Howie, let's get a room at the Bonaventure Hotel. You know, I'll get the room and we'll go there. And I'd say, now, come on, Kenny, you know, I love you, brother, but I don't go there. I like girls, you know. And he'd say, okay. So then he'd call me up and come by again a few days later, and he was practically in tears. I said, Kenny, what's the matter? He said, I wrecked my Porsche on Sunset. I totaled it out. And I said, well, the insurance should cover it, right? And he said, I didn't have insurance on it. I thought, holy smokes, you got a $40,000 Porsche? You total it? You got no insurance? You got the blues, pal. Anyway, Kenny was a good friend, and he came to me through Hubie and the Billy Preston Experience. So finally, the record is done. We released it, and you can see the pictures. And this was the funkiest band I had ever been in by far, and I loved it. And they all treated me like equals and like a brother, and it wasn't like, oh, here's the one white guy in the band. It was like we're all brothers and sisters, and it was really groovy. So we had more gigs after the first album. We started writing more songs, and we were about 6 months into 1966, preparing for the Hollywood album. Well, in the year and a half that I was rehearsing and playing and doing all of this stuff because I loved it, I hadn't made a dime. And I got to the point where I said, man, this is just a great experience, but I need to make some money. And Soko he had another John Mayall album to do and another tour. So I got my friend Rob Roberti the gig, as we were always helping each other out like that. So Rob was practicing and with us for several months. In fact, Rob ended up doing the album, and I bailed just before the recording. I needed some cash and had to go. But it was one of the greatest experiences of my life, and these players were just something else. Man, I love my time with Silver, Platinum, and Gold. And I hope you enjoy these songs I'm going to play and these clips that I put up with Hubie and Billy. You'll see his smile and just how infectious he was.
You were heard on the organ, yo. Listen to you.
Thanks for coming along with me today and reliving the funkiest experiences of my life, riding on the Soul Train with Silver, Platinum, and Gold. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you don't mind, if you liked it, please hit the like button and subscribe. That way we can get a better placement in the search engine, and more people will come and hear all of the adventures of the old-time rock and roller. It will be great. So keep love in your heart, my friends. Keep a song in your head, and I will see you down the Story Highway on the next adventure from the old-time rock and roll. For now, so long.